It is time to continue the process. Wildcard weekend is always revealing, not because it tells you who's good, but because it tells you why teams win, how they lose, which assumptions still hold up, when the game actually matters. Let's start where it began last Saturday with the Rams in Carolina. Carolina overachieved by just getting here, and honestly, they overachieved again in that game. They defended home turf, they made it uncomfortable, and they forced the Rams to deal with a version of themselves that shows up way too often, which is winning but flirting with chaos while doing it. The Rams still got the job done, which is what good teams do in January. But Stafford, he settled in. Kyren eventually helped to anchor the game. And Puka was Puka, a slate breaker in a way I didn't expect. At least we had him in tournaments, not in cash, and that distinction mattered. If you played him everywhere, you were sitting pretty. If you didn't, you felt it, likely. That's the playoff lesson right there. Ceilings don't announce themselves. They ambush you. Saturday night was where things got loud. Green Bay at Chicago turned into fireworks, tried to make it to Tiny's High Dive here on the west side off of Pico, and couldn't even get in the building, y'all. Line down the street, Bears fans, 30 minutes into the game, had to come on back home and stop watching it on the phone and just try to watch it here. But shout out to everybody that was there, probably erupted as this game was unfolding. And I'll be honest, as a Bears fan, I didn't see it coming like that. As an analyst, I came on this show and I picked Green Bay, a pick I'm going to stand by. Their defense is real, and it had been real all year. What I didn't fully account for was the way Ben Johnson adjusted in the second half. Those wrinkles mattered. Chicago shut Green Bay out after halftime, essentially. Just changed not shut them out in the sense of no points, but changed the dynamics of the football game, essentially, and forced them into situations they didn't want to be in and actually executed offensively. Now, let's be clear. This isn't some Cinderella defense. The Bears still gave up 27 points. They're not built to go the distance, but what they showed is that at home, with crowd, weather, and momentum, this offense can survive bad situations. And honestly, guys, that's going to matter down the stretch as we continue to unfold in the playoffs here. Sunday morning brought Buffalo at Jacksonville, and this one's on me. I had Jacksonville, guys. They were at home. They were favored, and my read was simple. If Buffalo won, it had to be a full Josh Allen takeover, something we hadn't really consistently seen this year. And, that's exactly what happened. Allen did do Josh Allen things. He spread it around, made plays when they mattered, and Buffalo escaped. From Jacksonville's side, the absence of Etienne mattered more than anything. I mean, if they're going to win games like that, he has to be a factor, right? I think and he just wasn't. And when your cash game running back, for my purposes, is a guy that basically yields you 10 points in a spot like that, it's a hole you're digging out of all slate, right? So San Francisco at Philadelphia went exactly how we talked about it. We took San Francisco on the road, and the story stayed the same. Philly's issue all year hasn't been talent, it's been direction. The play calling stagnated. The offense stayed predictable, basically. And once you neutralize Barkley, there's no second punch right now. That's not on the players, that's on the structure. 5 offensive coordinators in 5 years, and they got this done, right? So that's a story there. San Francisco didn't dominate, but they played good enough defense, right? Good enough defense to get Saleh a job interview with the Dolphins. But they leaned on McCaffrey and took advantage of a team that couldn't get out of its own way, essentially. Sunday night in New England was another miss. I had the Chargers. They never showed up. New England's defense controlled that game from start to finish, collapsed the pocket, and took away every comfort Los Angeles needed. McConkey never got going. The run game never materialized. And once again, the Chargers found themselves swallowing, a bunch of crow in January. That's 2 straight years now. I heard from Patriots fans before and after this one, and that's okay. That's okay. We're all enjoying our fandom. I did get a little guff for picking against them last week, and like I said, I heard from it on the back end of that game too, and that's fine. I'll say it again with my chest this week. New England is good, but they've also benefited from favorable situations, everybody. We'll see how real it is as the road continues to steepen here. And then Monday night, Houston at Pittsburgh. That one we got right as well. Houston went on the road and handled business. I expected more resistance from Pittsburgh offensively, but it didn't matter. Houston dictated the game. Stroud was our cash game quarterback. Collins was the investment, and unfortunately, the concussion took that off the board for us. Higgins didn't become the secondary beneficiary that we had hoped for, right? Christian Kirk stepped into that role instead. That's playoff variance. What are you going to do, right? That's why process matters more than individual outcomes. The idea that the secondary or ancillary piece would be able to provide something we could use was right. We just didn't get the right guy. But that is what you take away. The bigger takeaway actually is from Wildcard Weekend is this: cash games are going to get harder in the playoffs, not easier. Fewer games, tighter rotations, thinner margins, and that's exactly that's tough. For tournaments though, that's where creativity opens up. Smaller player pools mean even more leverage if you're willing to think in scripts instead of games and instead of names, right? I should say. So, and that's exactly where we're headed next. So that was last week. And with that in mind, time to continue the process, y'all. Let's move into Would You Rather. Let's talk about where the decisions start to get uncomfortable. Let's go over who I would rather play in certain conundrums or scenarios this week if I'm on the DFS side of things. And as we know, some people are still playing playoff, postseason football, if you will, fantasy football, where it's like a structured league. So we got to give some picks for them. All right. Let's get into it, and things are going to tighten up. A lot of these names look similar on the surface, but their roles and their paths to production are very, very different, as I keep harping on. So we'll start with Hunter Henry versus Luther Burden this week. And for me, this one's got to be Hunter Henry. And it's not because Burden isn't talented. It's because opportunity still rules everything this time of year. Henry is a central, piece of that offense. When New England throws in scoring areas, he's involved. Burden, on the other hand, is still fighting through layers in Chicago. You've got DJ Moore. You've got Rome Odunze back and healthy now. You've got tight end rotating, looks essentially in that offense. And now Kyle Monungai stealing red zone touches. Burden can flash, but Henry's floor is simply more dependable right about now. Neither is a smash spot, but Henry's path is clearer. Next one, Cortland Sutton or Colston Loveland this week. I'll take Loveland here. This is about environment. Cold weather games tend to condense usage, and when offense shrinks, tight ends benefit. Loveland's seeing scheme looks near the goal line, and that matters more than raw yardage projection to me. Sutton can get there. I'm still playing him in tournaments, but it's like I'm not going to go out of my way to force him in cash. Loveland's usage is quieter, but it's more efficient for this slate. Now let's talk Cortland Sutton versus RJ Harvey. And this one's RJ Harvey for me. It's not even close. Harvey's being used with intent. He's part of the run plan, not an accessory to it. Sutton can still hit, but if you're relying on contested catches against coverage that's been willing to take him away, that might be an issue. Harvey's workload gives him multiple ways to get there: volume, red zone touches, and game script. He's one of the backs I'm actively prioritizing this week. And so that's him there. How about DeAndre Swift versus Colston Loveland this week? Who'd you rather play? I'm going to go with Loveland again. Swift can touch the ball 12 to 15 times and still finish with the frustrating line because the Bears' goal line work is fragmented. Monungai is real. He's stealing touchdowns. If I'm betting on a Bear to score through the air or short yardage, Loveland has a clearer lane than Swift right now. Swift's fine, but the ceiling outcome is capped. Next up, would you rather Hunter Henry or DJ Moore this week? And this is another Hunter Henry spot for me. Moore has talent, but Chicago spreads the ball around. The way defenses are playing them lately forces Caleb Williams to distribute instead of locking in. Henry, again, is a focal point in the red zone. I'll take the guy who doesn't need 8 catches to pay off. Cortland Sutton or DeAndre Swift? Who'd you rather play here? All right, so in this one, I'll flip back to Swift. Even with the touchdown siphoning, the touch count matters, right? Swift still gets used in space, and the Bears want the ball out quickly. Sutton's ceiling is real, but his week-to-week floor is thinner than Swift's is right now. Next up, would you rather this week play Juwan Jennings or Colston Loveland? I'll take Loveland. If, Jennings is viable, anytime you got Purdy out there, but his production is dependent on game flow and defensive breakdowns. Loveland's usage is more deliberate. When they need a short conversion or a red zone look, he's part of that plan. Stephon Diggs or Ramondre Stevenson this week. Give me Diggs this week. Both in tough spots, but Stevenson's workload is murky with Henderson mixed in. Diggs, even in a difficult matchup, still commands targets. Targets matter more than carries when usage isn't guaranteed. Diggs has more ways to salvage a line. Let me take him there. All right, next up, would you rather Devontae Adams or Kyren Williams? This is Kyren Williams for me. Everything about this game script points toward the Rams wanting to control the tempo, shorten the game, and keep Caleb Williams off the field. Kyren is the anchor of that plan. Adams can still hit, but Kyren dictates the game. Next up, would you rather play Christian McCaffrey this week or Jackson Smith and Jigba? I'm going to take JSN here. McCaffrey's always viable, but he's expensive and heavily schemed against. Seattle's path to, separating in this game runs through the air, and JSN's role has expanded when games matter. You can play McCaffrey in tournaments, to be clear, but JSN gives you similar upside at a far better price point this week, basically. At least $500 off. You could use that on a slate like this. That matters. Blake Corum or Troy Franklin this week? I'll go Troy Franklin. Corum is still a change of pace option. Franklin has an actual role in the passing game when snaps matter. I want the guy whose involvement isn't conditional. Something I'm going to keep harping on, right? And finally, this week, would you rather play Cortland Sutton or Woody Marks? This one's Sutton by default. Marks is in a brutal spot. Sutton isn't a dream matchup this week. He doesn't have a dream matchup, but he's still part of the offensive plan. Sometimes the answer isn't exciting. It's just the least restrictive option. I think that's what we got right here. But that is our would you rather for this divisional week of playoff action. None of these are guarantees. That's not the point of this segment. The point is understanding where the paths to production actually live and choosing the one that gives you more outs when the game doesn't go perfectly. That's what that segment's about. Hey, quick pause right here for a minute. Let's talk about something that I saw last week when I was at CES in Vegas for work. I was walking the floor and ended up crossing paths with Derek Rose, who was there, promoting products with Dreamy, a company he's working with. They did a whole Q&A session. It was awesome. Got to see him, and then he's on the show floor looking at some of their stuff. That's pretty cool, right? And it stuck with me because when you watch great teams up close, whether it's sports or business, you realize something pretty quickly. The difference isn't talent always. Sometimes it can be, but sometimes the difference is fit, timing, and role clarity. And that's exactly what we do at Fraction. Companies don't fail because they can't find people. They fail because they hired the wrong people at the wrong time at full-time cost, and then expect everything to magically click. That's the equivalent of forcing a max contract guy into the wrong system and then wondering why it doesn't work. Fraction lets teams bring in senior US-based operators, so engineers, product leaders, marketers on a fractional basis when they actually need them for the problems they're actually trying to solve. No bloated roster, no long ramp, no panic hires. It's role players, stars, and specialists deployed the right way. If you're building, scaling, or trying to stabilize without blowing up your cap table, that's what Fraction is built for. Go ahead and visit our site. We'd love to reach out to you and see if we can help you out. All right, back to the board. We're moving on to that big segment where we're going to talk about the game scripts. We're going to reload the divisional round this week, and let's get it going. Remember, reload isn't about trying to be cute. It's about understanding how these playoff games are actually going to be played, where the leverage is and where the resistance is, and which teams can still win when things get uncomfortable. We'll start Saturday with Buffalo at Denver. Look, Buffalo on the road, tough environment, but the matchup points us in a very specific direction. Denver closed the season as one of the best pass defenses in football, number one in opponent completion percentage and yards per attempt over the final stretch. If you're Denver, the path is obvious. Slow it down, lean into the run also, and try to keep Josh Allen off schedule. That's where RJ Harvey becomes relevant again. The usage is real. The commitment is real. Whether it works is another question, because Buffalo quietly finished the year as a top-tier run defense as well for their part. For Buffalo, since we're talking about them, the numbers The numbers bring us right back to the same conclusion we reached last week. If they win, it's because Josh Allen takes over. Denver doesn't give you easy throwing lanes. They don't miss tackles in space. Allen's legs are the leverage point here. He led Buffalo in red zone rushing attempts late in the season. And when the game compresses in January, that becomes even more valuable territory, right? From the Denver side, you can take tournament shots through the air, but on paper, that's not how you beat this Bills defense. Buffalo allows one of the lowest explosive pass rates in the league, especially against quarterbacks who don't consistently extend plays. This is a defensive game. Both teams will play good defense, but Buffalo has the better quarterback, essentially, and that usually decides things this time of year. I'm going to take Buffalo on the road this week. Reload. Saturday night, San Francisco 49ers at Seattle Seahawks. The 49ers overachieved defensively last week. Let's get that straight, but context matters. Philadelphia has structural offensive issues. We've talked about it all season. Seattle does not have those issues. Seattle finished the year top 10 in explosive pass rates, and it's quietly built one of the better special team units in football. That's going to matter in playoffs. These are playoffs are where games, where field position absolutely 100% can swing outcomes, right? So that matters, and that's why we like Shaheed this week. San Francisco's offense is still extremely concentrated. Everything flows through McCaffrey. He's going to be expensive again this week, and yes, you can play him, but we don't need to in order to win this slate. Kittle isn't at full strength. The receiver usage is volatile, and they don't have the same margin for error they once did. Seattle's quarterback situation is pretty much consistent all year. Sam Darnold, very willing to stretch it downfield, right? And they finished the season as one of the more efficient passing teams in neutral game scripts. This is a spot where Seattle can dictate pressure through pace rather than volume. The run game hasn't been consistent, but this is a Charbonnet spot, especially near the goal line. And don't overlook special teams again, as I said. I'm not buying a defensive transformation from San Francisco. I think Seattle is the better team right now in this environment. I'm taking Seattle at home. Reload. Next up, we have Houston at New England. We have the Texans at the Patriots. I'll say it again clearly. I don't think New England is a great football team, but I also don't think Houston can win this game without Nico Collins. Houston's offense, without him, loses spacing, timing, and its ability to punish single coverage. That showed up immediately once he went down last week. New England's defense is playing disciplined football. They finished the year top 10 in pressure rate without heavy blitzing, which matters against a Houston offensive line that's already been shaky. For Houston to win this game, they need defensive touchdowns or total dominance. Pick sixes, short fields, chaos. That's possible, but it's not something I'm betting on this week. For New England, the game likely runs through Drake May. They're not committing fully to the run. Stevenson isn't reliable right now, and Henderson's role is inconsistent, but May has shown all season that he can create when structure breaks down, and Houston's defense is aggressive enough to leave windows if he escapes. Without Collins, Houston margin is just too thin. I'm going to take New England at home in this one. Reload. And in that final spot this week on Sunday, we got the Rams at the Bears, and what a spot. Chicago is going to be buzzing again. The weather is going to be brutal. And as much as I love the Bears, and trust me, I do, I'm picking against them again this week. The Bears defense hasn't been able to stop anybody all year. Cold weather helps, but it doesn't fix structural issues. The Rams learned their lesson last week. Kyren Williams is the lever. When they run the ball, shorten the game, and control possession, they dictate outcomes. Chicago finished near the bottom of the league in rushing EPA allowed, and that doesn't magically change in January. On the other side, I'm still playing Caleb Williams. His rushing floor matters, and the Rams defense allows quarterbacks to create when plays break down. But if the Rams execute their plan, Caleb's volume comes from chasing, not controlling. I hate to say it, but this is a Rams script. Run the ball, control the clock, take the crowd out of it. I'm taking the Rams on the road this week. That is Reload for this week, and that'll hopefully help you guys understand who you want to pick and where the game scenarios may go if you want to make some bets. Boom. All right. Now, look, before we wrap, we got a couple other things to talk about, but let's pause before we get there. This ties directly into how I think about this week's slate, right? One of the biggest mistakes teams make, whether it's football or software, is assuming effort equals progress, and it does not. You know what it does? Visibility. At Fraction, we kept running into this same problem with engineering teams, especially distributed ones. Everyone felt busy, but nobody could clearly answer who was actually moving the ball downfield. So we build DevHawk. DevHawk gives you real-time visibility into what your developers are actually doing. Commits, pull requests, story points, velocity, all in one place. No guesswork, no vibes, just the tape. It's the difference between thinking your offense is working and actually knowing which players are gaining yardage. If you're managing engineers and you've ever asked yourself, are we really making progress or just burning clock? That's exactly what DevHawk is built for. That's what it's built to answer. You can try it for free right now at devhawk.ai. All right, let's swing back over into the football world completely with our DFS picks. And let's talk through the rest of this slate. We'll go position by position here and talk through how I'm actually playing it. We got my picks on the screen there for you, cash first, right? And then we can get into some of the uncomfortable tournament situations. But if we start with the running back, for cash, everything still runs through Kyren Williams, $6,100. This isn't complicated. The Rams want to shorten this game. Like I keep saying, they want to protect Stafford, and then they want to keep Caleb Williams on the sideline as much as possible in this cold weather game too. Kyron's role hasn't changed, the volume hasn't changed, and the matchup doesn't require efficiency. It requires touches on a short slate. Predictable volume beats creativity, and Kyren gives you that. The other cash game running back I'm comfortable with is RJ Harvey at $6,200, and this is more about role than opponent. Denver's path in this game is on the ground, especially against a Buffalo pass defense that closed the season as one of the best units in football. Harvey isn't flashy, but he's involved early, he's involved often, and he's the most stable way to get exposure to that offense without guessing where the passing production goes. If you need to save, Zach Charbonnet at $5,300 is fine, especially in Seattle builds. He's not explosive, but he's getting the work, and in playoff DFS, opportunity is currency, right? All right. Now, Kyle Manunga at $5,500 is where we pivot. He's not a cash game play for me, but he is very much a tournament lever. If Chicago scores on the ground, I think it's just him, not Swift, right? And if you're betting on the Rams defense, forcing red zone decisions, Manunga becomes one of those slate breaker touchdowns that flips tournaments. Moving the wide receiver at the top, Puka Nacua, 9K is exactly what you think he is, right? 9K because he is exactly what you think he is. If you're paying up, you're doing it, and you know why. He's matchup proof, he's target proof, and he's game skip proof. He's not required in cash, but never wrong in tournaments. The receiver I care about most across formats is JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba at $8,500. Seattle's offense is condensed, his role is secure, and if the game with San Francisco turns into a push the pace environment, he's the cleanest way to get there. He's expensive, but he earns it. San Francisco, Devontae Adams at $6,500 is interesting. He's not a priority in cash, but in tournaments, he's one of the better leverage plays on the board. The price is fair, the volume is still there, and he doesn't need efficiency to break this slate. Just one of those vintage Devontae games will do it. From there, we drop into the value tier. You got Roma Dunze at $5,300, who's viable if you're playing Caleb. You're betting on chemistry and talent over matchup. And while the Rams will pressure, Doomsday is still the kind of receiver who can win on broken plays. Khalil Shakir at $5,100 is sneaky. Buffalo spreads it out, but when teams sell out, I should say, to stop the run and spy Allen, Shakir benefits underneath. He's not exciting, but he fits builds that prioritize some stability out there. And if you're punting, Ricky Pearsall at $4,800 and Jaden Higgins at $4,600 are both tournament-only darts. You're not only, you're not playing them for floor. You're playing them because their playoff slates reward one random spike each week, right? And this could be one of those guys, in full candor. At the very bottom, Cooper Kupp at $3,500, strictly a tournament play, but he's the kind of tournament play that wins you the slate if the Rams decide to dust off the short area. Excuse me, if the Seahawks decide to dust off the short area passing game. You don't need to love it. You don't need to acknowledge the upside. You just need to acknowledge the upside. Tight end is actually one of the clearer positions this week. For cash, I'm perfectly comfortable with Colston Loveland at $5,500. He's the most integrated tight end in the offense. He has touchdown equity, and in cold weather or condensed games, tight ends matter. If you're saving, Dalton Kincaid at $4,300 is still viable. The yardage floor isn't massive, but the role is there, especially if Buffalo leans on short area throws this week. Now, Dalton Schultz at $4,200 is fine, but he's fragile without Collins. You're betting on volume, not explosiveness. For tournaments, Kobe Parkinson at $3,700 and Jake Tungus at $3,400 makes a lot of sense. And Tongus, I think, if you want to insert him in cash, I don't think I have a problem with that. They did have a willingness to go to him when we saw Kittle out last time, but that's about exploiting variance when you're playing Parkinson. And finally, defense for cash. If it's, Patriots, $3,100 or Seattle at $3,200, I think that's fine for cash. New England at home with Houston banged up gives you sack and turnover equity. Seattle benefits from pressure and special teams, and in playoff DFS, defensive touchdowns swing everything. If you're saving every dollar, Bills at $2,600 are going to be fine. You're betting on chaos, not control there. That is our DFS picks for this week. And again, don't wholeheartedly steal what I'm doing. You supplement where you're confused or where you have so much money left over and you're thinking, well, who in this realm or who in this tier? That's what that segment is for, everybody. But at that, nothing else left to do but to clean some house, right? Quick housekeeping before we wrap this up and close it out. And this is where I want to be very clear about what the actual bets are, because none of these have these are individual positions that I feel best about heading into this weekend, not parlays, not ladders, just clean, isolated bets where the role, the number, and the game environment are all line up for me. So if we start in Seattle, Sam Darnold over 1.5 passing touchdowns feels safe. This isn't about ceiling, it's about structure. Seattle doesn't need him to be explosive. They need him to distribute and finish drives against the San Francisco defense that still gives up red zone opportunities through the air. 2 passing touchdowns is a reasonable ask, not a reach. This week is staying in that same game. Zach Charbonnet over 45.5 rushing yards. I'll take that as Zach Charbonnet, a rushing or receiving touchdown. These are role-based bets. When Seattle gets inside the 10, the ambiguity disappears. His usage tightens, and in the postseason, that kind of clarity matters more than raw explosiveness does. Also in that game, Jake Tungus over 37.5 receiving yards. That's not chasing upside. That's targeting involvement, short area routes, chain moving usage, and a game script that supports steady volume. From the spread side, Seattle -7.5. This is about mismatch and momentum. I'm not buying San Francisco's defensive surge as sustainable, and I think Seattle can control this game without needing to get cute, taking them outright. Now to Buffalo and Denver. Buffalo +2.5. I'm going to take that this week. That's a quarterback bet in a playoff game expected to stay tight and defensive. I'll take Josh Allen with points almost every time. This isn't a blowout call. It's a margin call. Rams at Bears, Los Angeles. Rams -3.5. That's who I'm going to take here, taking them outright. This is about game control. If the Rams lean into Kyren Williams and keep Caleb Williams on the sideline, that number plays. It doesn't require perfection. It requires discipline. And finally, Houston at New England. I'm taking New England this week, right? That's a defensive environment bet. Home field, playoff pace, and Houston's offensive limitations without Collins and that offensive line all matter to me here. And again, it's not flashy. This is just logical, right? So to be crystal clear, individual bets. You don't need all of them. You don't need to pair them. Pick the ones that align with how you play or what you think about this week. But that's housekeeping. That's a clean house for us. And that's going to do it for this week. As always, this isn't about chasing everything on the board. It's about understanding why you're playing something, trusting the role, and trusting the numbers and letting the game come to you. We learn it. We scout it correctly. We put ourselves in position to crush every week, and then we let the results take care of themselves. I'll be right back here next week on the process, and you already know we will then continue to learn, scout, win, and repeat. Good luck this weekend, guys. Peace.